Ah, you heard my call. Good. Your imbalance woke me from a deep slumber.
Imbalance?
Your presence is like a violent storm in this quiet world.
You're a Force wielder. But you're not a Jedi.
The Bendu. Where do we start with such a mysterious being? Someone who is neither light nor dark, good or evil. Simply as he put it, the one in the middle. And if that doesn't make things any more difficult, we have to come to grips with the fact that the Bendu is a large creature of unknown origin on an otherwise abandoned planet. And that's where today's video is going to take us, to a place unknown to all of us. One where we will speculate, draw from the annals of history, and look at the concepts perhaps beyond our wildest imagination. Today, we discuss the origins of the Bendu. Now, we've already published a video as to who the Bendu is, so for your convenience, I've linked that video above and in the description below. If you're completely unknown to who the Bendu is, my Who Is video explaining the known Bendu will be paramount to the remainder of this video, so definitely watch that one first, and excuse me in advance for any information that we might have to repeat for some context purposes. Now, the origins of the Bendu lay outside of Star Wars, and, well, let me explain, as this is paramount to our entire theory. Now, as we all know, the Bendu debuts in Star Wars Rebels, which is written in large part by Dave Filoni. And it's important to know that Dave Filoni was already an established writer and Imagineer prior to being hired by Lucasfilm and Disney. For those of you who don't know, he worked prior on a show that some of you may have seen already in Avatar: The Last Airbender, which aired on Nickelodeon. During the course of Avatar: The Last Airbender, a character is introduced to the show that has clearly inspired Star Wars' The Bendu, and the character is referred to as the Lion Turtle. The Lion Turtle, interestingly enough, is referred to as the Ancient One in the show, and as per the Avatar lore, it also serves to inform us that the Lion Turtle is the largest and oldest animal in the world itself of Avatar. And that's not coincidence. These turtles were also very much in touch with the essences of fire, earth, etc., as they all held an affinity or skill for those traits. They were also a type of protectorate for the humans at the time, and operated in a more solitary fashion away from other turtles. Now, here is where we may find some answers or foreshadowing of the Bendu's origins in the Star Wars universe. As we all know, the Lucasfilm Story Group has historically enjoyed drawing from old tidbits of Lucasfilm archive, whether it be the Emperor's throne in The Rise of Skywalker or the style of Darth Vader's helmet which served in Star Wars Rebels. And so I think it's likely that the Bendu, who is already heavily inspired by the Lion Turtle, as worked on by Dave Filoni in the Avatar show, could share a similar history or inspiration. The Lion Turtle's history is detailed and could offer us a glimpse, as we've just said, into what happened into the Bendu, his origins. According to the Avatar fandom online, the turtles would relinquish their roles as protectors and begin to roam the world. However, at a certain point in time, the turtles had been hunted down to near extinction, with only one turtle remaining. And that's not a coincidence. When we encounter the Bendu on Atollon, the Bendu is voluntarily living in solitude. And not only is he living in solitude, many times we can see his anger spark. And sometimes it seems his anger is sparked over being bothered by the trivial matters of man. Paralleling to the Avatar, the last turtle hides from humans by disguising himself as a city to avoid complete extinction of his race. However, like the Bendu in Star Wars, he emerges to give advice to someone important on a hero's journey. Aang, in this case, who shares similarity in their pursuit and goodness of a better future, just like Ezra Bridger and Kanan Jarrus. Now, interestingly enough, the turtle imparts advice onto Aang, similar to the advice that Bendu gives to Kanan and Ezra. Where Ezra and Kanan are learned upon themselves the light and the dark and the benefit of the middle, also teaches the hero character Aang the use of bending within himself versus just bending the elements around you, and how you need an unbendable spirit to achieve that higher power. So from the world of Avatar, influenced by Dave Filoni himself, and borrowed from by Dave Filoni for the purposes of Star Wars, we can perhaps start to put the pieces together as to the Bendu's origins and history in Star Wars. A history where it's possible that there was more than one Bendu in the Star Wars universe, where there were many Bendu that roamed the galaxy, aiding the pursuit of the Force and helping fledgling Force users be on their way. And it's not entirely out of the question that these bastions of knowledge and power were hunted down, to eliminate the sect of power, to make room for a new power, to make room for the dark side. And I think it's very likely that in the vast tens of thousands of years in Star Wars history, that perhaps the Sith, or an even more ancient dark side power, sought to overthrow the Bendu to assert their own interpretation of the Force. But where does that leave us now? Are there hints of the Bendu leaving more influence in the galaxy? The next part of the origin deep dive takes us into the deep galactic history to an order of individuals named the Dai Bendu. Now for this portion, I'm going to rely on both legends and canon, as this entire video of origins explores a lot of theory that draws from both, including real life and Dave Filoni's work on the Avatar.
I thought the holocrons were just libraries of information.
They are that, and more. If two such powerful sources of knowledge are united, they will grant a clarity of vision beyond your kind.
What does that mean?
When joined, any secret, wisdom, or destiny can be seen through the Force. One could bring much chaos with such hidden truths. I have seen it before.
The Dai Bendu were an ancient order of alleged Force users, or Force sensitives, that existed to the known galaxy as far back as 40,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, at least according to literature from the Star Wars fact files. They were credited with not only being one of the first recorded known Force users, but also those who were amongst the first recorded to be able to traverse space travel, which opened up the galaxy for a new age of exploration. Now here we're going to see similarities to the turtle in Avatar. The Dai Bendu order often referred to themselves as monks, or were referred to as monks by others. They traveled together, studied together, and interpreted the Force in different ways. These monks were isolated though from other Force users before the events that led to Force-sensitive people to Tython, through the THRAWN event. Now for added context, the THRAWN event occurred when these space vessel ships, known as the THRAWN, capable of carrying many people, appeared on different planets all at the same time, called to those living beings, and transported them to the Force-sensitive planet known as Tython. Now as you can tell, this event is certainly a type of Big Bang for the Jedi, or a biblical moment so to speak. Before we talk about the Dai Bendu's involvement with the THRAWN event, we have to clear up a few more things. The big similarity from the turtle to the Dai Bendu in the Avatar, and the Bendu in Star Wars, seems to be the theme of isolation here. The Dai Bendu eventually found themselves settling into the Andobi Mountains, where they stayed in that isolation. And the Bendu tribe, much like the tribes in the world of Avatar, also stayed isolated from one another, or away from others due to the fact that the Bendu itself was so large, so knowledgeable, so self-sufficient, that there was no need to venture outside their tribe, their shelter, and it's something to certainly keep in mind going forward. So just like the Bendu creature himself that presents himself to our heroes Kanan and Ezra, much of his origins begin to turn into sand, blowing away and scattering into the wind forever. As such, many centuries pass, and by the peak of the Republic, the order of the Dai Bendu faded away into obscurity. Its name was only mentioned in a handful of deteriorating historical records. And while some scholars speculated that the Bendu monks were among the earliest forms of the Jedi Order, no conclusive evidence was ever found to confirm that theory. And during the era leading up to the birth of Anakin Skywalker, the Sith Lord Darth Plagueis, mentor to the infamous Palpatine, was one of the few individuals who possessed writings related to the Dai Bendu Order, as well as other ancient Force-centered groups like the followers of the Palawa and the Katos Academy. And just as we sought to explore a little bit more about the origins of the Bendu, we can't really go to him for answers anymore, because during Star Wars Rebels, the Bendu seemingly dies at the hands of THRAWN, though he does get a seeming last laugh upon his alleged death. And even in this death, perhaps maybe it was just a transformation, but I guess it's something we'll have to wait to find out about. But for our purposes here, it seems that we may have exhausted all the avenues of lore we could dive into and discover more about the Bendu as we meet him in Star Wars Rebels. But from my point of view, I've chosen to believe that the Bendu were once abundant, embodying different aspects of the Force, light, dark, gray, fire, and ice, and that they were types of teachers towards monks, in this case, the eventual tribes known as the Dai Bendu. As time passed though, as selfishness and as evil grew, as the Bendu outlived their use, the lust for power satiated amongst different tribes. A hunt ensued for the Bendu, killing them off. Or perhaps the Bendu felt they outlived their purpose and scattered into the galaxy, dying one by one as time passed. Regardless, we have had the privilege to encounter, perhaps, the final Bendu. As such, the Bendu cast a shadow over the Star Wars universe as a whole, and what is locked away in his mind may hold the darkest secrets or greatest knowledge that could change the galaxy as a whole forever. So here's the big question for today. What do you think of the origins of the Bendu? Do you think the Bendu still has a significant role left to play in the Star Wars galaxy? And even though it seems like he may have died at the hands of THRAWN in the ending of Star Wars Rebels, if he didn't die, what purpose will he serve? And what's going to happen if we meet him again? Personally, I hope we get to meet the Bendu again, as I think he may be one of the most powerful beings to be able to influence the Star Wars galaxy, for better or for worse. So my friends, I hope you enjoyed. Try and discover more about the origins of the Bendu with me. And if you happen to find the Bendu, or learn a little bit more about his history, let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, share this video, and subscribe. And may the Force be with you, always.